Welcome back, everyone. So I'm now going to hand straight over to our second speaker. So welcome to Jaco van Gass, adventurer, world champion, para-cyclist and motivational speaker. Jaco, over to you.
Thank you very much. Hello, guys. Hope you're well. Thank you very much for having me here today. And hope you've had a wonderful morning. Today, I really just want to share a little bit of my life story with you. As you can see, we've been heading from Afghanistan to Japan, and it's been quite a phenomenal journey there. But first off, we'll start off with a video. Please enjoy.
I'm feeling a bit nauseous out there. Oh, that was hard. That last little bit was tough.
Life will test you in every moment. It is how you react that defines you. And when you thought that you've had everything thrown at you, life will test you once again. And again.
Jaco! Stay with me!
It is how you react that defines you. The ability to push yourself somewhere beyond.
Jaco van Gass, double gold.
You are more powerful than you'll ever know.
It has been one of my greatest honors and privileges to have served with the British military, and especially within the parachute regiment. It was on my second tour of duty to Afghanistan back in 2009, when we deployed on what would have been probably one of our final missions. At this moment in time, I was 5.5 months in on my second tour. And that night, we conducted a very successful operation. Heading back, using a cover in darkness to the best of our ability, we were heading back into the desert to where the helicopters were going to pick us up and fly us back to safety. It's on the way there that a call came over the radio saying that the pilot wasn't happy with the landing site. He's giving us coordinates for a new pickup point. The new route took us on an unproven route, and we soon came across a small number of individuals in a patrolling formation. At this stage, we couldn't identify any weapons, and we went firm. We worked very closely with some of the Afghan national forces who we fight alongside with. As they speak the local language, we send a small section of them forward to approach these guys and say, hey, we're in the area, we need to conduct some searches, and we'll be on our way. They approached them, shouted out a number of verbal commands, and at first they didn't react to it. And then suddenly one of them pulled out an AK-47 and opened up with a spray of bullets in our general direction. These guys got dropped very quickly, but it soon became apparent that we were taking on a much larger force than just a number of individuals on a hilltop. And about 45 minutes in to what is now a severe firefight, 2 RPGs, rocket-propelled grenades, was fired from my left flank. The first came over our heads and exploded in the distance, with the second one fired low, ricocheting and bouncing off the ground, heading towards my general direction. At this very moment in time, I was on one knee. I was giving covering fire to my sniper partner, putting on a fresh magazine, when all I can see was this red glow in the side of my night vision goggles, and the sound of this rocket just getting louder and louder. And in a split second's reaction, I twisted my head away and my body to the oncoming rocket. And at that very moment, the rocket made impact. The blast blew me about 5 meters away from my original position. Dazed, confused, not knowing what just happened, I woke up, still hearing the guys firing in the background, and all that's going through my mind is, I need to get back into this firefight. And it's that moment in time that I realized that I've lost my left arm. Very soon I received life-saving medical treatment from the medic. We managed to get the helicopter in, and it's once on that helicopter, flying back to safety, that I knew I was going home. Dead or alive, I was going home. And at that moment in time, I lost consciousness. The next slide's got some graphics, so please do feel free to look away until I change the slide. 6 days later, I woke up out of an induced coma. Seeing friends and family's faces around me was very confusing. My last clear memory was being in Afghanistan in a firefight, and I remember being injured, losing my arm, and I thought I was in a hospital in Kabul somewhere, or Bastion. And I didn't want my friends and family and my parents in the country, in Afghanistan. And it took a great deal of convincing from the doctors and my family to say that I'm in Silog Hospital, I'm in Birmingham, I'm fine, you know, we're safe, we're all safe. And I thought, great. From Afghanistan to Birmingham, from one shithole to another. But there wasn't a great deal we could do about that. But this was the first time I can really reflect on what happened to me. As I mentioned before, I remember losing my left arm, but what I did not know was all the other injuries I sustained that night. I've lost my left arm just above the elbow. I had a collapsed left lung. I had shrapnel wounds from my left side, which punctured some of my internal organs, which led to having a colostomy for 9 months. I've lost a third of muscle and tissue to my left upper thigh. I fractured my left knee totally. I had a fasciotomy on both sides of my left calf, and I've broken my tibia and fibula really badly, needing pins and screws to hold it all together. It's looking down on myself at this state that I realized that my military career is over. And I started asking myself, well, if I can't be in the military and do the job that I loved so much and that I was really good at, what will I be capable of doing? What will I become? Who's going to employ someone with half an arm missing and half a leg missing? And the future seemed really dark, and I've fallen into quite a bit of depression, actually. A couple of days later, in my hospital bed, I was watching a television program. It was about an Australian lady who was disabled. She had no arms, and it was amazing to see how she carried on with life. But over the whole program, the one thing that she said that stuck to me was that life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. And I thought that that was just so powerful. And I then went on to apply that to my life ever since. Learning to walk again, learning to run again, constantly setting myself new goals, new challenges. And before I knew it, one of the biggest challenges of them all came my way. To be part of a team to walk unsupported to the geographical North Pole. to try and do something that's never been done before by a group of wounded servicemen and women.
I got shot 2.5 years ago. The bullet severed my artery. This will be the single biggest test that I've probably ever had. The biggest challenge I'm going to face with one hand is getting that tent up quickly so it's not going to get blown away in the wind.
Being injured last year in Afghanistan, I've got hit by an RPG while we were on patrol. Got into contact, and yes, got hit from the flank by an RPG.
In Afghanistan, during Panther's Claw, got struck by an IED, and obviously that's when I broke my back. That was a awful day. I was told, you know, you're not going to walk again.
My vehicle was hit by an RPG, which pierced the hull of the vehicle, went through my leg. I'm missing an ankle and a calf, and it is really not that big a deal. And for me, it is not holding me back, and it won't hold me back.
You can carry on if you put your mind to it. Really, there's nothing that can stop you. This means really a lot to me.
Something I've always wanted to do, like, it's probably the biggest challenge out there.
My youngest son is severely disabled, and these guys have come into disability, and I feel like those try to raise money for people who have disabilities. I mean, you know, whether they've been blown up in war, whether they're born with it.
A huge proportion of the wounded who have come back from Iraq and Afghanistan, they couldn't do this, but they've still got the potential of a full and active life, and hopefully by these guys achieving what we aim to achieve, that will provide some inspiration for these other people.
Never quit. Never.
So out of 110 applicants, only 4 of us was chosen to take on this unbelievable challenge. We find ourselves in the Arctic Circle, having trained and prepared for nearly up to a year for this great challenge. And on the way, we'll be facing a number of smaller challenges. It's not going to be easy at all. The North Pole is obviously made out of 100% frozen sea ice. So it's constantly moving and constantly changing. And sometimes we can track anything between 10 and 15 miles, hours a day, covering anything between 10 and 20 miles, and then camp and get negative drift and drift backwards and lose some of the distance that we've covered. It can also go the other way or sideways. We also have to be vigilant of polar bears. We take on these expeditions in the spring, and these guys are actively looking and hunting for food coming out of a very long winter. Also, the ice conditions at various places, it was thicker than others, and there's other areas where it was, not thin enough or thick enough to kind of ski on, so you can actually fall through the ice. And then open water leads, where the ice actually does split apart from each other, and exposing the bare water underneath you. So after 2 weeks, 14 days of looking out for polar bears, excuse me, looking out for polar bears, thinking about the ice conditions constantly, and looking after each other within these freezing conditions. We faced temperatures as low as -45. So looking after each other on a buddy-buddy system. We finally made it. And this is the photo. We stood on top of the world, 90 degrees north at the geographical North Pole. It was a truly remarkable moment for all of us. So many people within the polar community told us we won't be able to do this. The injuries we carry is too severe. the distance we wanted to do, unsupported, was too far, too extreme. So proving them wrong was actually quite nice. And we inspired a lot of people, not just within the military world, but also within the civilian world as well. Coming back, landing at Heathrow, the question on everyone's lips was, what is next? And we came up with Everest. To put a soldier on top of the world once more. Everest is standing tall at 8,856 meters. This was going to be a great challenge again. Out of 80 applicants, 5 of us was chosen. Myself, this time being part of the team once more, so was Martin, playing a different role within the charity, being mentors to some of the other guys that's on the team, and also my ability of climbing in higher altitudes really suited me well. We found ourselves at Everest Base Camp after 8 months of preparation and training and having summited one of the 8 highest mountains in the world, ready and taking on this challenge of getting to the top of Everest. Now, there's a whole system that needs to fall in place to get to the top of Everest. You know, you don't just get to base camp over a weekend and within a few days you'll be at the top of Everest. There's a whole acclimatization phase that needs to go on by going to higher altitudes, acclimatize to that, to then come back down to recover. And then you keep repeating this. And very soon a weather window for us opened up after one of our acclimatization phases. And the ability to go to the top was open.
As long as we get to count 2 before the other ones start falling, I'll be happy.
Crossing a ladder, spanning a seemingly bottomless crevasse with only one arm, takes nerves to do it.
It is terrifying. It's like walking on a living being. It's constantly moving, it's constantly changing. And at every corner, every aspect of it, there is some form of danger.
They start to spread out. Jaco and Francis taking the lead. Carl and David slipping behind.
Brain is kind of undulating.
Higher up the icefall, Jaco and Francis are facing their own problems.
There was an enormous crack and then a massive rumbling.
Francis and Jaco are caught in the path of an approaching avalanche.
I sprinted as fast as I can behind a massive ice boulder, and then from there on just waiting for the impact. An ice wave came through us and swept through the area.
Let's get out of here.
As the avalanche passes, the team get a move on, reaching the top of the icefall at dawn. But in the daylight, they can now see just what they're facing.
It's a bit mad. You can't believe how deep these crevasses are. But the terrain is absolutely insane.
So a rather eventful morning we had. We eventually reached Camp 2. This was our base camp for the next couple of days until we get higher up to Camp 3. This was very difficult, again, with some of the weather systems that we faced. We've made 2 attempts to Camp 3, and every time I had to turn around because it was just not in our favor to get there, to stay there, and to go higher. A decision was eventually made to go all the way back down to base camp, where it's a lot more comfortable for all of us. A big weather system was due to come in, make the mountain a bit safer, and then maybe wait for a second summit attempt. Back at base camp, Russell Bryce, our expedition leader, called us into the big dome tent and then broke the news to us. Expedition is over. He's cancelling it. It's just too dangerous for us to try and get to the top. For all of us, this was a very big shock. At this moment in time, we were 10 maybe even 11 weeks away from our loved ones, our family, our friends. Now having to turn around and go back and face them to tell them that we didn't make it, that we failed. This was a very difficult thing to do. While we were getting ready at base camp to head further down the mountain, start packing all our stuff up, I was having a conversation with a friend over text, and he sent me this verse reading, "Jaco, success is not final, failure is not final, but it's the courage to continue that counts." And I was mulling this over in my head a few times, and I kind of realized what he was trying to say with this verse. If we go back to that picture of myself in my hospital bed, not knowing where life's going to take me, not knowing what's going to happen, where the future seemed so bleak and so dark, and I was even questioning why I still survived, why I was still here. And we fast forward to the pure fact that we got to a place in our life where not just myself, but all these other individuals even attempted Everest, something as crazy as Everest. That in itself is mission success, because along the way, we've rebuilt our lives. I've gone on to do so many other things that I never ever thought I would be able to do. And the pure fact of even attempting Everest, that in itself is mission success, if you think of where we were. Yes, we didn't get to the top, but I've learned so much of life lessons on Everest. I've briefly explained the acclimatization phase that we have to go through to try and get to the top. And I remember the first time going from base camp to Camp 1 was probably the most single hardest day I have ever had in my life. And we got to Camp 1 and all this doubt set into my head going, if this tiny little section of the mountain is so hard, it's so difficult, how am I ever going to get to the top? But once we were at Camp 1, we spent a few hours there, we went back down to base camp, and we spent a few days there. And during these days, your body recovers, it creates more red blood cells, which helps carrying oxygen. So the next time we went from base camp to Camp 1, I found it a great deal easier. I got to Camp 1 and feeling really all right. But then we pushed on to Camp 2. And all the hardship starts again, and all the struggle starts again. Once at Camp 2, you spend a few hours there, you come back down to Camp 1, you rest, you recover. And you repeat this process a number of times until you eventually reach the summit. Now, isn't that the same in life? Sometimes we need to take a few steps back to make one giant leap forward. And I think the most important thing is when we take these steps back, when we are faced with challenges, when we are faced with setback and difficult times, what red blood cells do we create? What do we learn from these times? What can we actually learn and take from the people next to us, to yourself, and your surroundings to then move forward? Because you're going to face it again. And guess what? You'll then have the tools to then move forward, knowing how to deal with this problem, and then to go on higher up the mountain. Back in London, it was the Olympics and Paralympics year. I was very fortunate enough to have had a very small involvement in that. I was a torchbearer, and I also was in the crowds cheering these amazing athletes on, and just blown away by their performances, and then looking to my left and to my right and seeing how inspirational they were and how the crowd cheered them on. And there and then I decided I didn't want to be in that stance anymore. I wanted to be on the field, and that little seed of becoming a Paralympian was planted and slowly growing within me. I always had a passion for cycling, and I was picked up by British Cycling and very quickly escalated through the ranks in preparation for Rio 2016. Selection came and I wasn't selected. This was a huge blow to me. I've done so much. I've sacrificed so much in my life, from relationships to friendships, looking at my diet constantly, asking myself one question the whole time, living my life by one question. And that question was, what's going to make me faster on the bike? And that's quite a lonely way to live. To then not be selected was really a big blow in the stomach. I walked away, I reassessed the situation, and again, just like Everest, I had to come back, I had to look at the situation and go, well, what can I do different than what I've done this time? I actually removed myself from the British cycling program. I became an independent rider, and I built a team around me that's buying into my dream, that's going to support me get to the place where I want to be. In January 2020, I was invited by British Cycling to go and represent them at the Track World Championships in Canada. And I went there partaking in 5 events, and I came back a 3-time world champion and a 2-time silver medalist. With this new world championship title, I then stand a very good chance of going to Tokyo. British Cycling invited me back, and I was in the build-up towards Tokyo, building towards that dream that I've had for so long. We all know what happened then. A pandemic hit. And I felt like all my dreams were crushing down, were tumbling down again. I've worked so hard, so many hours on the bike, so many sacrifices, just to be selected, to be in that moment, to finally become a Paralympian. And then the world throws something at us. But again, I felt like there was so much I've dealt with before that in the grand scheme of things, a postponed Paralympics is actually not the worst thing in the world. I've actually made the best time of this. Training harder than I've ever done before, looking in all those marginal gains where we can get faster and quicker. And before you knew it, 18 months is gone. We're on a plane to Tokyo. And on that very first event, my dream came true. I partook in my first Paralympic Games, 5 events, and I won 3 medals, 2 Paralympic golds and 1 bronze, and breaking 3 world records in the process. I mean, it couldn't have worked out better for me, even if I tried harder. The thing is sometimes that life throws a lot of angles at you, a lot of struggles, but it's how we deal with it. And I'm not going to lie, this was an 8-year journey. 8 years of sitting in the crowds to becoming a Paralympian. And not just becoming a Paralympian, but becoming a Paralympic champion. And along that way, there were so many times I wanted to give up. There were so many times where my journey was actually so far from being a Paralympian. But somehow I clawed it back and reached that goal. I reached my Everest. And what I want to encourage you today is to remember that we're all going to face difficulties along the way. And goodness me, have we faced difficulties over the last 18 months. But can we reflect back on this time and think, what could have I done better? What have I actually learned about myself? Maybe even about my colleagues, about my work environment. And how can we improve this moving forward? If we are constantly going to face these challenges, or for future challenges that we might be facing. But no, having that goal, having that dream, to never ever give up and to keep working hard. Thank you very much.
Jaco, thank you so much. That was really inspirational and sort of moving. Before we head off to the break, I do just want to just get one question to you, if I may, which is comes from one of our participants, Nikki. She asks, where do you get your courage from in the darker days, and what advice would you give to us as a profession?
You just said it again. Where do I get my
courage
from in the darker days? again, it's you know, I do rely a lot on the people and the team around me. I have a fantastic fiance, and it's having those people and support systems around you to utilize them. I think, you know, I loved my time in the army, and it taught me a lot of things. But the one thing that it did do was also that it was that boyish thing of I can do everything myself. I can get through this problem on my own. And I think the best thing about what happened or about my injury, and actually the best thing about going into some extreme environments with an injury, it forces you to ask for help. And during these expeditions, the North Pole, Everest, some of the other, you know, challenges that I've done, I had to rely on other teammates to help me do up my zip or put something on, you know, whatever it might be. Yes, I could do it myself, but in those environments, something that's going to take me 5 minutes and I can just turn to a teammate and it's going to take them 30 seconds makes a huge difference. Or exposing my one good hand that I have to the cold to potentially get frostbite wasn't an option. So actually keeping a glove on and asking a teammate to help with something. So asking, and I then apply that to my life by actually, you know what? It's okay to ask people for help. We don't have to fight the world on our own every single day.
Thank you so much. And so there was a lot of appreciation coming from sort of the virtual class. I'm sure you can see them up on the screen.